Tell me, when will you be mine? Tell me quando, quando, quando we can share a love divine. Please don't make me wait again. When will you say yes?
This is What's in a Name, the Engelbert Humperdinck story, and I'm Bill Kenwright. Over the next hour, I'll attempt to get to the very core of the man who became Gerry Dorsey, who became Engelbert Humperdinck, and a worldwide phenomenon.
Oh, my love, please tell me when. Every moment's a day. Every day seems a lifetime. Let me show you the way to a joy beyond compare.
It's lovely to be here and to meet you for the first time.
Thank you, Bill. Nice to meet you.
I'm going to ask the obvious question. What do I call you?
You can call me Eng.
Eng.
Yeah.
As opposed to Eng. Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I take you back to the start?
Okay.
Were Mum and Dad, were they musical in India?
Yes, my mother played the violin, and she had a wonderful, like an operatic voice, you know. She was never professional or anything like that, but when she sang, she could rattle the windows and the chandeliers.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
And your dad?
My dad, he was the boss. He was the godfather of the entire family, and he was very strict with us, and he wanted me to be an engineer, but I guess that didn't happen.
And how many of you were there?
There's 10 of us in our family.
10 of you?
Yeah, 7 sisters and 2 brothers I got.
Oh, my gosh. Our family was a big family,
Yeah.
a musical family. We would get round the piano every Saturday, and we would sing the songs, and Uncle George would harmonise. And
Really?
That's, where my love of music came from. And reading the book, I thought it was a great read and an extraordinarily honest read. That's
Thank
what
you.
I loved about it. I see a lad then who's not unlike the man who he grew up to be, a lad who is quite shy, bit of a loner, doesn't think he's the greatest thing in the world. In fact, you talk about how you didn't like your nose, how you didn't feel that you fitted particularly. And yet you must have had something in you that said, hey, there's a life out there.
I had a dream. I did want to be a musician right at the beginning. I said, this is it. Because of my last name, Dorsey, so I wanted to be like maybe Jimmy Dorsey, because I liked the saxophone a lot.
Yeah.
And so I started taking saxophone lessons. And I did it at the age of 11. My first sax cost £5, and it was difficult to blow, but I took lessons with it until I was 17.
Because you didn't think you could sing, is that why?
No,
Sax?
I didn't even try.
You didn't try, you didn't know.
But the whole family used to sing at parties and things like that, and I would do the harmony. I never sang solo.
Yeah.
I knew music right at a very early age. If you can harmonize, means you've got a good ear. You know.
And you came back from India to Leicester?
To Leicester.
In
46?
46. Yeah, 46. So
And
when did the singing happen?
Actually, it happened when I went to a working man's club and I was 17 years old. People were getting up and singing, so I got up and sang. And people were coming up to me, got a standing O, like they were all standing up and clapping. And they came over to me and said, who's your agent? I said, what agent? But it was auditions for clubs,
And did you go, oh my God, they're standing, they're clapping, they're cheering for me?
Yeah, I know.
Me with the flat nose and the guy who wanted to play the saxophone?
Yeah. I just said to myself, there's something I have to do here. I think, I bought some music, sheet music, and I went to a lady that played the piano in Leicester, and I said, could you show me what keys I sang in and where to go back to here, and what does this mean, and what does that mean? And so then I went and worked in the working men's clubs.
And do you remember the song you sang at the working men's club? Because I'm going to tell you.
What was it?
Your eyes are the eyes of a woman. Frankie Lane, who was a huge, huge favourite of mine.
Yeah.
Frankie Lane.
And oh, how they give you away. Why try to deny you're a woman in love when I know very well what I say?
Does the moment come like it did for me? I've got to leave Liverpool. I've got to leave Leicester. Is that a big time in your life?
It did come to me after I'd come out of the service,
Oh, you went into the national service?
I did national service 18 to 20, and then I took my sax with me, and I took my voice with me, because I was singing in the working men's clubs from 17 to 18, and then I got a little bit of experience there. When I came out of the army, I started working in clubs again.
In the Leicester area?
Oh, no, all over, really? In the north and Sheffield and everywhere, you know, and where the clubs were prevalent, you know, where a lot of clubs. And so I was earning 30 shillings a weekend, which was wonderful, you know, and I was able to buy clothes that I could wear on the stage, you know, on a weekly payment.
HP, on the Never Never, as we used to call it.
Lonely table just for one, in a bright and crowded room, while the music has begun. I drink to memories in the gloom. Though the music's still the same, it has a bitter-sweet refrain. So play the song the way it used to be, before she left and changed it all to sadness. And maybe if she's passing by the window, she will hear our love song and the melody. And even if the words are not so tender, she will always remember the way it used to be.
I want to know, you get on the train to London, big step for a lad in those days.
Yes.
Big step.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful story that I love, that you book into the Grosvenor House.
Yes.
Because you want to be a posh boy for the first few interviews. I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
It was so expensive. I mean, I saved all my money, and of course, my family gave me some money to do that as well. You know, to show a sort of a front. You know, to think that, you know, he's not a poor boy, but he's you know, he's staying at the Grosvenor. When I left the Grosvenor, I had nothing.
But was there a plan?
The plan was for the people to see me in the right place.
The club circuit was quite big in London then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And did you join that circuit?
What happened was, when you were beginning in this business, we used to hang out in Tin Pan Alley.
Denmark Street.
Yeah, and all the old vans would be lined up, and if anybody wanted to work, you bang on the van and say, "Any of you guys want to work this weekend?" You know, and if you had a job in a club, and you'd pick up musicians looking to make a bob or two, and they would be hanging out around there.
When Gerry Dorsey, who I was a fan of, I thought Gerry Dorsey was a really good singer, and I thought you made some good records. Where does the recording side of Gerry come from?
I met a lot of people as I was trying to get on in the industry. And when I had the record, I was with Parlophone, I think it was. No, EMI. And Norman Newell was one of my dear friends, because I'd been recording with him, and I made a record, and I was in Hammersmith, and...
Still with no money?
Still with no money, and with a flat, and I just had a little child. And I went up to Norman, I said, "Norman, do you think I could have an advance on my royalties?" He said, "What royalties?" I said, "Norman, I've got to pay my rent, you know, and this and that." You know, he said, "Well, you don't have any royalties." He says, "But I'll give you a personal check." And he said, "When you got the money, you can pay me back." Norman did this several times, £75, because it was a quarter, I had to pay £75. And he would do that several times for me. And then finally, when I did get up my break and I recorded Release Me, I still hadn't paid Norman back his money because I didn't have any. But I said to Gordon Mills, my manager at the time, I said, "Gordon, we must record some of Norman's songs." I said, because he's been very good to me in my early career. So we recorded In Time, which Norman wrote, recorded More Than the Greatest Love, and many other songs that Norman wrote. And then I bumped into Norman in the Talk of the Town. I said, "Norman, I still haven't paid you back.
Those £75 you
No, the few £75. He said, you have paid me back 1,000 times over by recording my songs. Thank you very much.
I was a fool, and like a fool I cannot hide my sorrows. I was a fool, I thought that you would share all my tomorrows. Though I was wrong, believing you'd belong to me forever. Now that you're gone, I hope I learn to live again in time. In time I may forget your smile, and in a while I may forget I love you. In time I may forget my tears, and through the years I may forget I need you. In time maybe there'll be a new love to love me. I can't go on belonging to the past, but I pray that one day in time you come back and be mine.
But you did make some quite good records, I thought, as Gerry Dorsey. You recorded for Hickory at the end, the country and western label.
I did, yeah. But
And you did a few for Decca and a couple for Parlophone. And Oh Boy came along.
yeah. First of all, I was on a program called Song Parade
The Grenadiers.
with the Grenadiers, and I was on there for a whole year, and I became quite a household name.
Oh, yeah, you were.
Under the name of Gerry Dorsey. And,
You used to wear sweaters, if I remember.
No, well, in
You
the
were
show.
all-
In the show,
You
yes.
did in the show, yeah.
Yeah, I did. I sing the pop songs of the era, you know. And it was a great experience for me to be on television week after week after week, 42 weeks in a year.
Yeah.
It got me quite a name. I went out topping the bills in certain
Yeah.
places.
Jack Good came along and said, I've got a couple of old boys for you, and you did those.
Yes, I did, yes.
Was that good? Was that fun?
Absolutely. And I want to tell you, the first time I ever did the Oh Boy, because everything was live, you know, and there was
Yeah.
the band was down below. And at that particular time, the Dallas Boys were on the show with me, who come from Leicester as well. And I was singing a song called They Asked Me How I Do.
Yeah.
And the intro had about 8 bars of da,
The
da,
platters.
da, 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 da. It had 8 bars of that. And I had to walk down these steps. Well, as I stood at the top of the steps to come down, I couldn't quite count the music out. So I asked one of the Dallas
I should
boys.
think you couldn't hear it either,
Yeah,
because there were screams going on, I should
But
think.
I
from
didn't know that.
Oh, right.
I didn't know that.
So they didn't tell you it was all screaming
No,
as you
so
walked on.
I didn't know that, but I said to Stan, I said, Stan, could you count me in 8 bars?
This is Stan Dallas.
Yeah, so he stood beside the camera, and he was counting the bars. And when I hit the top step, the screams, I couldn't hear the music either. So I kind of had to pitch in my head, you know. And I was walking on this 8 bars. When I got to the last 8 bar, he pointed to me, and I went, "They asked me
How I knew my true love was true. I, of course, replied, something here inside cannot be denied. They said someday you'll find all who love are blind. Oh, when your heart's on fire, you must realize smoke gets in your eyes. So I chaff them and I gaily laugh to think they could doubt my love. Yet today my love has flown away. I am without against you right, tears I cannot hide. Oh, so I smile and say, when a lovely flame dies, smoke gets in your eyes.
That was a great period in British rock and roll, and I know you toured with Marty and with Adam Faith and people like that. So Gerry Dorsey was doing well, but he wasn't quite doing what the dream was.
No.
Wasn't quite getting the dream. During that period, you had a very close friend who was touring, singing Who Put the Bump in the Bump, Shabump, Shabump, Who Put the Ram in the Ram, which was Gordon Mills, of the Viscounts. When was it that you decided that Gerry would go with Gordon and start this extraordinary part of your career?
We were all travelling together, actually, Viscounts and Gerry. And I was the opening act.
Yeah.
I was opening. I had to go do two songs at the beginning, or three. And Viscounts had a name because they had a hit record. And that's how I met Gordon.
And you were close friends?
And then we became close friends and, of course, flatmates, you know. We shared the same flat. And then, of course, later on, he was my manager.
How did he become your manager?
He became very good at songwriting, and he gave up the business and started to write songs, and he became a manager.
And publishing at a great publishing company.
And everything like that. And that's where I met my dear friend Les Reed.
Engelbert and I met in 1959. We were on tour together. I was with the John Barry Seven as pianist, and he was just playing Gerry Dorsey. And through those tours, we had 2 years together, and we literally became great mates. We became very, very close. And I remember on one particular tour we did, he said, Les, are you going home tonight? I said, well, you know, we're stuck here in Devon, and we've got to get to Margate tomorrow. He said, well, why don't you stop with me at Rock House, which is in Notting Hill Gate. And I said, well, that would be nice. Have you got a spare bed? He said, well, 2 or 3 of us use it when we're in between venues. So why don't you come back and just stay the night? Then we can travel together up to Margate the next day. So it was marvellous. He made me a cup of tea. I went to bed. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, I was suddenly tipped out of the bed. And I heard this Welsh voice say, what are you doing in my bed? And it was Gordon Mills, who was on the same tour and decided that he would stay there that night as well. But I was actually sleeping in his bed. So I ended up on the floor. He ended up in the bed. But in the morning, to his credit, he made me a lovely breakfast. And then we became great mates.
And Les was like, we used to sit on the bus together, you know, when we were travelling, doing these one-nighters. And
what was Les doing with the one-nighters? Was he performing?
Les was the piano player.
Oh, he was the piano player?
Yeah, he was playing for John Barry Seven at that particular time.
I didn't know that.
At that particular time.
Songwriter and one of the nicest guys in show business, Barry Mason.
I've written more songs than anybody, Frank, but 42 tracks, not arranged, co-written, 42 different songs for him. And I'm very proud of that. But it's a beautiful voice to write for. At the time, it was all sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And when we made the demo, the engineer laughed. He said, what's the title? We said, The Last Waltz. And he said, come on, seriously, what's it called? And it was so against everything else that was in the charts at the time. So it was a wonderful surprise.
I wonder, should I go or should I stay? The band had only one more song to play. And then I saw you at the corner of my eye. A little girl alone and so shy. With you, 2 lonely people together. I fell in should last forever. But the love we had was going strong. Through the good and bad we get along. And then the flame of love died in your eye. My heart was broken too when you said goodbye. I had the last waltz with you.
You're listening to What's in a Name, the Engelbert Humperdinck story, and I'm Bill Kenwright.
When Gordon took over with me, I think it was the best thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
Because Gordon had a brilliant brain, yeah, as far as the music was concerned. He took me and changed my name. He gave me Engelbert Humperdinck's name. And
How did you feel about that?
I dealt with it very... I thought it was a group. It was so long.
But
I didn't even know who Engelbert Humperdinck was and the real one.
Was there an objection, or did you just think, well, Gordon knows what he's doing?
Yeah,
Let's
he
go
knows.
with it.
I suppose he knows what he's doing. You know, he gave Tom Jones his name. He gave Gilbert O'Sullivan his name. I suppose he knows what he's doing. So,
but why couldn't he call me Tom Jones as opposed to Engelbert Humperdinck? I'm sure you're
because
thinking
he gave him his name first, and then he gave me this name. But nevertheless, he knew what he was doing. And then
wasn't the Knock Your Song Festival just before then?
No, it was 2 years before.
But didn't that, and that's the reason we're here today, is to celebrate your Eurovision.
Yeah.
But wasn't that song contest a big turning point in your life?
Yeah.
When you went, and didn't you win? Didn't your group win?
Yes. Actually, Decca asked me to do it, you know, the Decca. And I went, and Arthur Greenslade did a wonderful arrangement of What Now My Love for Me, who's a wonderful arranger, God rest his soul, and a great man. And he did this wonderful arrangement. I went to Belgium, and I won the Knock-Your Song Festival.
Fantastic.
What now, my love? Now that you've left me, how can I live through another day? Watching my dreams turn into ashes, and oh, my hopes into bits of clay. Once I could see, once I could feel, now I am numb, I've become so unreal.
After that, of course, my name changed. I released a song over there called Dommage, Dommage.
Dommage, I remember it.
Went to #1.
Yeah, I remember.
But nothing happened after that. It was just #1 in Belgium, and nothing happened here with it or anything.
And this is where my pop-loving mind comes in. And the reason I'm sitting here is I love talent, and I love stars, and I love people like you who've just stayed at the top. Extraordinary. But what I'm thinking is Gordon Mills suddenly discovers this world called country and western. Mm-hmm. And he's got this massive hit with Tom Jones, Green, Green Grassophone. And there's this country and western standard from the 40s, and he gives it to you. It's rearranged, it's restyled. You take it and you make, I listened to it over the weekend, a great pop record with it. When you'd finished in the studio, did you have that magical moment? When you said, oh my gosh, this could be it?
This could be it. Yes.
Did you have that moment?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And that key change was my idea, you know. And, but when you hear the introduction to this song, it makes my hair stand up.
Oh, yeah.
Please release me, let me go, for I don't love you anymore. To waste our lives would be a sin. Release me and let me love again.
But I love the thought of Gerry, who has slept in toilets, who's had no furniture in his flat, who's borrowed money here, and becoming Engelbert in a studio, finishing Release Me and going, wow, that could be the one. What happens? Goes on Jukebox Jury.
And voted a miss.
Lulu says it's a hit.
Yes.
And it's a miss.
Yeah.
And it's released first week in January, and nothing happens.
Nothing.
And you must be sitting at home going, I thought that was the one.
So release me and let me love again. Please release me, can't you see? You'd be a fool to cling to me, to live a life.
And like so often happens in your life, you get a phone call.
Yeah.
And it's Gordon saying, well, you want to tell me, because it's the famous story now.
You're going to be on the Sunday night at the London Palladium. And I was taking the place of Dickie Valentine, who unfortunately got ill at that particular time. And I went on, and I had 6 minutes to establish myself. So we put 2 songs together at the beginning as a sort of a medley of 2 songs, you know. And
Do you remember what they were?
yeah, Country Road, Take Me
Take
Home.
Me Home.
That was one of them, you know. And then I had 3 minutes and 15 seconds with Release Me. So the 2 songs put together was very quick. And then I went into Release Me and introduced my new song.
When you got that phone call and you knew you were going to be on the Palladium, it must have been
my,
the world to
It
you.
was incredible. I want to tell you, it was incredible. After I'd sang the song, I got a phone call backstage from guess who?
Dickie Valentine.
Yes.
And then, guess who? My idol. Frankie the Great.
Frankie Vaughan.
Isn't that great?
Isn't
I
that
love
great?
that.
The
two
two
people have
phoned.
phoned Dickie Valentine.
Dickie Valentine of it. Yeah.
Okay, you know, you can hear already I'm a really emotional guy.
Yeah, yes, I can see
You're
that.
back with Patricia in the dressing room. Have you cracked it? Do you think you've cracked it? Do you think this is the one?
This,
Because the next week,
yeah,
that song that's not really done anything
yeah.
starts selling 80,000 a day.
And
goes
more.
into the charts at 15.
Yeah.
Within 2 weeks, it's number 1.
Yeah.
And it's in the Guinness Book of Records as the longest running
Record in the
hit
charts.
of all time in the
Yes.
charts.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Dickie Valentine. Thank you, the London
Yeah,
Palladium.
yes.
Within 4 months, you're back at the Palladium, starring in Robinson Crusoe.
Yeah. 4 months of capacity crowds.
I know. And life had changed, totally changed.
Oh, yes, it
Engelbert Humperdinck was a superstar. Can I remind you of one story?
Go ahead.
Robinson Crusoe is you, the handsome leading man. In this particular scene, he gets captured by the cannibals. And he gets thrust. I saw it.
Oh,
he gets thrust into a wooden cage. He looks out at the audience, and what does he sing? Please, really. It brought the house down.
Yeah.
Everyone went wild.
Yeah.
So it was probably a turnaround in your life that
It was, yeah.
you couldn't dream of, could you?
No.
You absolutely couldn't dream of. And during that year, too, you went on tour, because I've got the poster in my office with the Walker Brothers, Cat Stevens,
Yes.
and extraordinarily Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix.
Did you get
yeah.
to know him?
Yes. Jimmy played for me. My guitarist didn't show up one time, and Jimmy said, "Don't worry, man, I'll play for you."
No.
He did.
Did they recognize him?
No, he was playing behind the curtain.
He played behind the guy. Was he a lovely guy?
Oh, lovely man. You don't meet people like that who offer their services, a massive star like that.
You then go to America, and Ed Sullivan plays a big part in your life.
Ed Sullivan. I went on the Ed Sullivan show, and that was it. Ed Sullivan shot everyone's career into orbit, because if you appeared on the Ed Sullivan show, you were a hit. Elvis did. The Beatles did.
Beatles, yeah.
And I went on, and I became a star in America. You know, I went to...
But the word is, he not only admired you as an artist, but he liked you, and I think that was important again.
Yeah.
Do you? I think that... Do you remember what you sang?
I can't remember the first number. What was it? Do you know?
No, that's what I don't.
I sang Release Me as my hit.
Did you on
Yes,
on the first time you were on?
Yeah,
I
first
wondered if it was "There Goes My Everything."
I sang that, I think, another time when I was on his show.
There goes my only possession. There goes my everything. I hear footsteps slowly walking as they gently walk across a lonely floor, and a voice is softly sing, darling, this will be goodbye forevermore. There goes my reason for living. There goes the one of my dreams. There goes my only possession. There goes my everything.
And did it take off immediately in America then?
Immediately.
Did it really?
Number one.
So you're a big star in America, and the world is open to you. And this, I've got to tell you, is what I love about your life and your career. What do you do then? You come home and do a summer season at Yarmouth.
Yeah.
I think that is magic. You're on the Ed Sullivan Show, and you still come back and do Yarmouth, where you were. You obviously, I would have thought, don't want to let your British public down, who have made you a huge recording star
Well, they
over
did.
here.
They made me, and so I did a couple of seasons,
Did you really?
Yeah.
And then you have your next 6 records after Release Me. Only one of them is not a top 3 hit, and that is number 5. Tom Jones's next 6 record, and I love Tom Jones after It's Not Unusual, never made the top 10. And I know at the time you like Liverpool and Everton must have been looking at each other saying, okay, who's the next one? I'm going to have the next one. But I should think it was a friendly rivalry, was it?
I was never, no rivalry against him, no. He was a rock and roller, I was the balladeer, and we were friends, and we lived not far from each other in Weybridge,
And, of course, you shared Gordon, the manager.
Yeah.
When did the colossal American Vegas success story start?
I went over in '67 to look at a few hotels in there to see what was going on when I went to do the Ed Sullivan Show and things like that. Actually, it was such an amazing thing. They were discussing my career in the Beverly Hills Hotel in a private room, and there were, I don't know, must have been 15 people around the table, 20 people, and I was sitting at the head next to Gordon, and I'm listening to them, and I put my head on my hands and fell asleep.
Well, they're discussing the most important things in your life.
I fell asleep because I was so tired, and I didn't get an opportunity to talk, so therefore I felt out of place. So let them get on with it, and I just fell asleep.
And what were they discussing?
I had a career.
And did you choose the Riviera to make your debut there?
My debut in Vegas was at the Riviera Hotel.
Yeah.
Dean Martin was one of the owners, and Dean took a shine to me. He liked me as a person, so he put his name up on the marquee. He said, Dean Martin presents Engelbert Humperdinck. We stayed friends till he passed away. He used to go to a restaurant called La Familia in L.A., and I would go there with his agent called Mort Weiner, who was also my agent. And he said, and you want to go eat with Dean tonight? I said, do I want to? So I said, so I'd go over there, and Dean had his own little booth, and we'd sit down and talk. And spent many a dinner with Dean, and he's the most magnificent man.
The blessings of your life. There you are in Leicester, doing Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis impersonations. Yes. And less than 10 years later, Dean saying, Eng, are we going to have supper tonight? Yeah. And you're sitting there talking to him.
But I have to tell you, he never ever called me Ange or Engelbert.
What did he call you?
He called me Humpy Bumpy Lumpy Dumpy.
Hey, why wouldn't he?
He said, hey, Humpy Bumpy Lumpy Dumpy, sit over here, pal.
They say you found somebody new. But that won't stop my love. Wish I could find somebody new, but I don't want no one but you. How can you leave without regret? Am I that easy to forget?
The wonderful thing about your life, and in many ways about my life, is we get to meet our heroes. And in the book, you talk about Bobby Darin, you talk about Cary Grant, who was obviously a big fan of yours. Anyone else that you met that you're thrilled by?
There was a party that was given by Buddy Greco's wife at one time, and it was on Sunset Boulevard. They're living in this apartment on the 20th floor. And I went up there, and I walked in, and I met one of the legends of all time, my favorite gangster.
Either Humpty or Edward G. Which one?
Edward G. Robinson.
Oh, fantastic.
And I was sitting at the table with Bobby Darin, Edward G. Robinson, and about 6 of us at the table. And he was sitting there, Edward G. Robinson was sitting there, and he said, "Has anybody here got a cigar?" I'd only just started smoking Havana cigars because, I'm going to bring up a name now, I was in Lou Grade's office, and he was smoking a cigar. He said, "Do you smoke?" I said, "Now and again I have a cigar." He said, "Have one of these. Try this." As I was walking out, he gave me the box of cigars. I took these to America, and that's right then, when I went to the party, I had a couple of these cigars in my pocket, you see. And then when he said, "Has anybody here got a cigar?" I took one. I said, "I have Mr. Robinson." I called him Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, of course you would. Yeah. What else?
And I handed it to him, and he took the cigar, and he put it up to his nose and sniffed all the way along it, all the way sniffing all the way along the cigar. And then he looked up at me, raised with an eyebrow, and he said, "That's a good cigar, kid."
Listen, you still do the impersonations. That's a very good Edward G. Robinson.
"That's a good cigar, kid."
Listen, I've got to get onto this one too, because less than 10 years after Gerry doesn't make it in the hit parade, you are a friend of the King, of Elvis. How did that come about? How did you meet him?
Actually, I went to see him perform at the International, which is now the Hilton Hotel. He found out that I was in the audience. He gave me the most fantastic introduction, you know. I went backstage to meet the King.
Yeah.
I want to tell you something. You know, normally when you meet a person for the first time, they usually shake your hand.
Yeah.
Elvis gave me a hug.
Yeah.
And he was that kind of guy. And then we became friends right away after that.
Isn't there a story that he copied the sideburns from you?
Well, he did take my... He didn't have sideburns at that time.
No.
Then he grew his sideburns.
And did he say... I presume he didn't call you Humpy Dumpy Wumpy Wumpy.
No.
He was Eng, was he?
Always Engelbert.
Engelbert. Okay.
How was my introduction? That's the first thing he said to me.
Bless him.
How was my introduction for you? I said, that was great. Just
beyond your wildest dreams.
Beyond my wildest dreams.
When you're sleeping in that telephone box.
Yeah.
"Hi, Engelbert, come and give me a hug. It's Elvis."
Yeah. And, you know, I was looking at him, and I learned and listened to the master of show business, you know. For me, I just fell in love with his whole persona.
Yeah.
He had humility and great charm. He never took his status seriously. He always took the mickey out of himself on stage, more or less. And I took that as a lesson. You know, don't take your position too seriously.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's kept me going. I never had any conceit or anything like that in my life. I took it from him. A man of his stature should have had a little bit of that, but he wasn't even vain in any way, shape, or form. He was vain enough to be that extravagant person with a cape and everything, you know, but
that's showbiz, though. That's showbiz. Showman.
And that was it. He created that whole thing.
I can remember when we walked together, sharing a love I thought would last forever. Moonlight to show the way so we can follow. Waiting inside her eyes was my tomorrow. Then something changed her mind. Her kisses told me I had no loving arms to hold me. Every day I wake up, then I start to break up. Lonely is a man without love. Every day I start out, then I cry my heart out. Lonely is a man without love. Every day I wake up, then I start to break up, knowing that it's cloudy above. Every day I start out, then I cry my heart out. Lonely is a man without love.
And the hits kept on coming
They did, yeah.
for about, until... gosh,
74.
the mid-70s was it.
Yeah.
And then, was it a decision in your life, or was it just fate that made you realise, long before anyone else, I have to say, that it was all going to be about albums, approaching 180 million?
150 odd.
No, it's now 180 is what I hear.
Really?
180 million, which
I
is
thought
extraordinary.
I never saw a lot of that money. That disappeared, but it was a company's decision, all that business. And I left. When I left, I parted from Gordon Mills before he died, and it was a sad situation. I went my own way, and
you feel sad about that still?
I do. I feel sad about it because Gordon created me, but I felt that he was more partial to the other guys than he was to me. So
Yeah. Did you ever have that opportunity to make up?
No, I regret that.
Because he's the man who came along.
Yeah.
Presumably found Release Me.
Yeah.
Presumably, well, we know he said, your name's going to be Engelbert Humperdinck.
He was my best man. I was his best man. We were the closest of friends. And then, something happened. And
Blue Spanish eyes, teardrops are falling from your Spanish eyes. Please don't cry. This is just adios and not goodbye. Soon I'll return, bringing you all the love your heart can hold. Say you and your Spanish eyes will wait for me.
You're a great family man, aren't you? I could see that, and I can tell that from what your son now manages you, and your family are always around you. You've got grandchildren, children. And how important has that been during your career?
my family are very important to me. As I took a lesson from my father, his family was important to him, and he brought everybody up well, and he catered to their every whim and every need. And when anything went wrong, he handled the situation. And that's what I do now with my family. I'm the godfather of my family.
It's nothing better, is there?
There's
than
nothing
to have the family around you and to sort of be a big part of their lives. I nearly said in charge, but no one's ever in charge of it. But to be the centre of the lives of your family is very, very important. Do you mind if we touch for a second on the bad period? In the book, you're extraordinarily candid about the fact that in the early 80s, you sort of became that little boy lost again, that boy who probably hid behind the curtains and didn't feel you were fulfilling your potential and took to the Remy Martin, according to the book.
Oh, yeah. I went through periods in my life, of unhappiness, because after Gordon, the other managers took over that I wasn't quite happy with. He didn't handle me in the proper way. I didn't particularly care for them, and they drove me to certain things, and that was one of them.
And you performed? You just carried on performing?
I carried on performing. I've never walked on stage drunk in my life, you know. After the show, you know, I might have one or two to drown my sorrows.
How big a problem was it during that time?
It was pretty big, but I did not become an alcoholic. Otherwise, I'd still be, you know.
And was there any moment when you said, that's it, I've had enough of this man that I am?
Yeah.
Did anything happen to bring you out of that?
Yes, I started doing training. I took martial arts.
And was it about that time you're elected to the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which is quite extraordinary for a lad from Leicester again?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
They put my star right outside the Roosevelt Hotel, which is a prime position.
And evidently you're there with Tom Hanks, the Beatles, Paul Newman.
Yes, all of them, yes. And it's nice to be among those wonderful people's names, yes.
And then that year you got a Grammy Award? For
and then
a big seller over there that wasn't a big seller over
here.
No,
After the Lovin', yeah.
So I sang you to sleep after the lovin' with a song I just wrote yesterday. And I hope you can hear what the words and the music have to say. It's so hard to explain everything that I'm feeling face to face. I just seem to go dry. But I love you so much that the sound of your voice can get me high. Thanks for taking me on a one-way trip to the sun. And thanks for turning me into someone. So I sing you to sleep after the loving. I brush back the hair from your eyes, and the love on your face is so real that it makes me wanna cry. And I know that my song isn't saying anything new. Oh, but after the love, I'm still in love with you.
Take me from the 90s to the present day. Was it just constant touring, working?
Touring.
Are you a workaholic?
I'm a workaholic.
Non-stop?
Non-stop. In those days, I was doing about 150 concerts a year.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, all over the world. And now it's down to about 90 a year now, 90 to 100. I'm more or less touring, doing world tours now, you know, really.
Do you still get the same buzz when you go on stage?
I do.
Do you?
I do. I am a nervous wreck before I walk on.
Are you really?
Oh, yes. I get cold hands. I think that edge is good for me, you know, because you never know what you're going to expect. It's like a fighter. You know, a fighter gets in the ring, he's nervous, he's jumping, he's looking at the other guy to see how he's going to fare with him, you know. But it's that kind of thing, that kind of edge I get before I walk on stage.
The Eurovision Song Contest is one of the biggest events in the world.
Yeah.
Why are you going in for the Eurovision Song Contest?
Because I love singing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's quite an honour representing the country.
It's great to hear you say that. Songwriter Les Reed.
If Engelbert says, I want to win, he's going to give it a really good shot. And I think, I really do think he stands a very good chance. You know, he's going in there with all the confidence that is needed. He's going to look $1 million. The women love him, you know, and so do the men too, secretly, you know, without admitting it. He's got a lot of charm. He's going to do well, believe me. He'll deliver. And you see what Engelbert has that no one really has, and this includes, well, Tom and a few of the others, he has a universal appeal. Now, he can go to any country in the world, and believe me, I've been there with him, and you just have to look at the audience, and they treat him like a god.
Songwriter Barry Mason.
He doesn't want to go all out for winning and make a fool of himself. That's what he must not do, because he's not. He's an elegant, seasoned performer that just is good at his job, and we should be glad to have him, and he does a dignified performance. But to stand there on an empty stage with a simple set and a guitarist, if that's what they're going to do, and no dancing girls, just Engelbert, this man alone singing this beautiful song, I think it'll be great.
But it is a big risk for you, because, you know, how many millions will be watching it?
Yeah.
And you're getting a bit spooked now. How many millions? I mean, millions and millions and millions. I find the way you talk about your country incredibly moving. I found the fact that you came back from America to play Great Yarmouth sensational. I think, you know, I am forever your fan because of that kind of thing. And more than anything, for you, I just hope you have the Canuck success repeated in the Eurovision. And what's the future? What's after that? Have you got tours lined up?
I'm sure this shop window that I'm appearing in right now is...
I love it. Engelbert Humperdinck in a shop window. You don't need a shop window, believe me. You are Engelbert Humperdinck.
You know, last year I played on a TV show in the Baltic States, and we went to Riga, and I did a TV show there, and we played to 80 million viewers.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that some of those viewers that saw me on the show last year will pick up the phone and vote for me.
It's a good song, though, isn't it?
It's a great song.
It's a good record.
Yeah.
More than anything, for you, as a guy who's represented this country so beautifully over the last 50 years now.
45.
Okay. I'm thinking of Gerry.
Oh, you're thinking of him as well? Yes.
Yeah, Gerry was there too. Not just Engelbert. Gerry was there.
So graceful and pure, a smile bathed in light. No matter the distance, a miracle of sight. Though I should have known, I could not turn away. When faced with your beauty, no reason can stay. As you kiss him in the moonlight, with heavy words I say, if you love someone, follow your heart, 'cause love comes once, if you're lucky enough. Though I'll miss you forever, the hurt will run deep. Only love can set you free. Trust in your dreams, run with no fear. And if you should stumble, remember I'm near. As a ghost I will walk, I look deep in my soul. I might find another. You gave me that hope. So as you kiss him in the moonlight, with heavy words I say, if you love someone, follow your heart, because love comes once, if you're lucky enough. Though I'll miss you forever, and the hurt will run deep, only love can set you free. And if you love someone, follow your heart, 'cause love comes once, if you're lucky enough.